One of the most asked questions we get when someone receives a drunk driving charge, especially a repeat offender, is how come they're not behind bars? While some people point to judges being too weak on offenders, ultimately it's state law that determines the minimum and maximum confinement for sentencing. 7 Investigates' Bree Bilek spoke with the judge about the factors that go into an appropriate sentencing. Bree, what can these penalties look like?
Well, Dale, there's a lot of factors like number of prior offenses and blood alcohol content, or BAC, at the time of arrest. For first-time offenders, their BAC determines if they'll be required to get an ignition interlock device and how long their license will be revoked. The BAC also determines how much they'll be fined, but things can change if there's a minor in the vehicle, injury, or death. Now, if someone is convicted of their fifth, there's quite the range for jail or prison time. The minimum is 18 months and the maximum is 10 years, which would be 5 years of confinement and 5 years of extended supervision. The fines also increase to the thousands, and even the 10th or more, state law limits the sentence to 15 years, which is 10 years of confinement unless there's a minor in the vehicle. Ultimately, the legislature sets the parameters for OWI laws. The court has to follow that law.
The legislature has determined that OWIs are a concern of the public, and as a result have taken away some discretion of the sentencing courts across the state.
A chief judge, along with a committee, makes recommendations for sentencing guidelines for each district in the state. Portage County is in District 9.
They may not all be the same. Some districts may have a higher penalty, either a monetary penalty or a jail sanction. So there's a range that the legislature allows, and they may start higher or lower depending on the district.
Portage County Circuit Court Judge Louis Milepski says in his experience, they tend to be fairly consistent across the state.
Judges cannot just throw away the key on people. That is unlawful. They can only sentence a person to the least amount of confinement necessary to effectuate the factors at sentencing.
Judges have to consider all of a person's needs and any factors at the time of sentencing.
No one case is the same, and no OWI is the same, that's for sure.
If you're driving someone to the hospital, that would be considered. But if you then injure someone, the judge will factor that in too.
So the court looks at the gravity of the offense, the rehabilitative needs of the defendant, and the need to protect the public, and also the character of the defendant, and the primary factors that the court considers in every case. Each judge has to individually sentence a person.
The judge loses some authority as a person accumulates convictions because the guidelines become more specific.
Judges, the ones I know, don't like seeing people just locked up and forgotten about. That's not our system. We want people to be able to express and live the freedom that the Constitution allows, which is liberty.
However, he says, when a person cannot control their drinking and drives, putting others at risk, that's where the concern to protect the public rises.
When their liberty affects that of another person's liberty, that is when the system and the courts, the district attorneys, and the criminal defense attorneys work together to make sure that that person has accountability.
But it's also important for judges to address alcoholism or other underlying factors in their life.
Outcomes are what's important, and the public should demand and expect good outcomes and good data.
Milepski says as charges keep going higher, and especially once they hit 4, 5, 6 or higher OWIs, a sentence starts looking like rehabilitation in confinement. He adds, if we have the opportunity through the system to bring a person up once they fall, we should get them back on track.